morning to all of you. I'm thrilled and excited to be here, and my sincere gratitude to Professor Siobhan for organizing this EMC 2026 and giving me the opportunity to be discussing in the vaccine and therapeutic section. We've just heard about the next generation vaccines, and I'm going to be discussing regarding the next generation therapeutics for Burkholderia pseudomallei. Greetings and namaste from India. I'm Dr. Neha Gupta, infectious diseases specialist. I'm founder of NG Swastha, which is our infectious diseases clinic, and I'm attached with Fortis Memorial Research Institute, Gurugram. So managing melioidosis is very complex, as we all know, and it is because it is intrinsically resistant to many antibiotics. But even if the antibiotic is susceptible, there is antibiotic intolerance which complicates melioidosis. And we have recently seen these posters being presented in the 10th World Melioidosis Conference, where we saw that the hypersensitivity to TMP-SMX may range up to 57%. These are the posters from Dr. Bart Query as well as Josh Hansen. So this is there is a limitation in the therapeutics and there is a need for newer solutions. And I'm going to describe a case here. This is not just a case, it's an experience which changed the way we treat melioidosis, and it has a potential for changing the paradigm of melioidosis management. This is a personal nightmare because my maternal uncle, who is a general surgeon in Rewa, Madhya Pradesh, which is a central part of India, and as we saw Dr. Malti presenting yesterday, it is not a traditional melioidosis endemic area. He presented in 2023 with fever. He has no comorbidities, presented with fever and right forearm pain. And although it's a city which is well developed, but still the microbiology is limited and cultures could not be sent. So as a part of this acute febrile illness where the WBC count is normal with a raised CRP, a possibility of salmonella infection was thought of, and he was empirically started on cefixime. The fever responded, however the pain persisted, and that's why he flew from Rewa to our clinic in Delhi NCR region. So we got the MRI done, and that showed that there is a significant collection in the metaphysis of the radius. So there was this right radial osteomyelitis along with elbow joint effusion. With this, we consulted the orthopedician who said that there is no infection, you just give the painkillers. However, as an ID, it was that there is a community-acquired osteomyelitis. Blood cultures were sent, and also a diagnostic tap was done from the right elbow joint, which was sent for the BGI panel. And this BGI panel detected strep pneumoniae. Now here was this diagnostic delay because strep pneumoniae could be a contamination, and Burkholderia pseudomallei is not part of this multiplex PCR panel. So with this result, the MRI as well as the BGI panel, we consulted the second orthopedician who said that, okay, I don't think any surgical intervention is really needed at this point, but you can continue with the antibiotics. And there was also apprehension from the patient side for the surgery. So it was continued on the antibiotics. However, on this ceftriaxone and linezolid, he started having fever. So there was a new onset fever which had developed again, and with this, the blood cultures were sent, which grew GNB. He deteriorated, and that's when meropenem was initiated along with teicoplanin. A repeat MRI was also performed, and this time it shows that there is an increase in the radial osteomyelitis. It has gone from the proximal to the distal part of the radius. As you can see, there is an edema throughout the radius here. This GNB was identified as Burkholderia pseudomallei. It took around 5 to 6 days for the total identification as well as for the DST. Now, he is a surgeon, completely immunocompetent, coming from a non-endemic area. How did he get this bone melioidosis? So as an ID, we further investigated, and it was found that there was a construction which was going on in front of his house, and that resulted in contamination of his potable drinking water. So he was actually using the borehole water, that also had got contaminated, and he was using it for mouth gargling. Probably this was the source for him getting the melioidosis. Now, since the diagnosis is made and we know that there is a problem in the bone, before the surgery, for the proper source control, a CT scan was also performed, which shows now that the melioidosis has extended. It has resulted in the fracture of the head of the radius here. He underwent the debridement from the second orthopedic surgeon, and it shows that there was a lot of pus which just gushed out. All the other investigations were negative. But despite this debridement, there was persistent pain which was present. So why is he having this? So for this, we constantly asked that we need to do a further debridement, but there was concern that probably the antibiotics are not appropriate. So we had to collaborate with the third orthopedic surgeon from Mumbai, and I knew him because I had worked in Hinduja Hospital. He has done a lot of work in infection related to the bones. And that's when we decided that he has to be reoperated again because it's the source which has to be controlled. So a week later, he underwent the second surgical debridement in a third hospital in the city from the fourth orthopedic surgeon. And also extensive intramedullary nailing was done and antibiotic stimulants were placed. Following the second debridement, he is afebrile, and that's where our journey or challenges with the antibiotics begin. So here he was right now, after the first debridement, he was on meropenem and minocycline, which was subsequently modified to ceftazidime 2 grams 6 hourly along with minocycline. He underwent the second debridement. After the second debridement, ceftazidime and TMP SMX was started. TMP SMX was not given earlier because he had mentioned that I have some allergy to TMP SMX in the past. On this antibiotic, a few days later, he developed severe drug-related eosinophilia with systemic symptoms. And as you can see, his whole body was red and he had a lot of flu-like symptoms. So the antibiotics had to be stopped. After a few days, when the symptoms subsided, ceftazidime was restarted. However, he developed severe drug intolerance. TMP-SMX was also tried again, but there was rash. So he was initiated back on meropenem. On this, he was having leukopenia, and minocycline, there was this loss of appetite and bad mouth taste. So we were really out of any options. There were no antibiotics which he was tolerating. And this is like, melioidosis is like a storm at times, and we have to take it head on. We looked out for newer alternative treatment options which would ensure safety as well as tolerability. And that's when I reached out to Dr. V. Balaji, who mentioned that there is some in vitro activity of levonarifloxacin against bloodstream isolates of Burkholderia pseudomallei. And in fact, in the study, he had shown that the levonarifloxacin demonstrated activity superior to that of ciprofloxacin and its various comparators. In fact, the MIC 90 of levonarifloxacin is 1 as compared to ciprofloxacin, which is 2. Time kill assays of levonarifloxacin against Burkholderia pseudomallei isolates have also been done, and it shows a sidal activity as compared to doxycycline, which shows a static activity against the Burkholderia pseudomallei. So friends and colleagues, I present to you levonarifloxacin, which is India's first research antibiotic. It is approved in India for treating acute bacterial skin and soft tissue infections, diabetic foot infections, bacteremia. In fact, for Staph aureus bacteremia as well. I have personally treated MRSA bacteremia and MSSA bacteremia with this. It has superior pharmacokinetics, including sidal activity, very high bone penetration, anti-biofilm properties, and has excellent oral bioavailability and tolerability. The magic is in the structure of levonarifloxacin. It is a novel benzoquinolazine fluoroquinolone, has this ring here, which imparts activity against MRSA and gram-negative bacteria like Burkholderia pseudomallei. This L-arginine salt results in a low phlebitis potential, and also this tetrahydrate form compound stabilizes it, so that we also have an oral formulation. It has a very dual mechanism of action. It acts against the DNA gyrase as well as polymerase, and it has no impact on the efflux pumps. Importantly, there is this OH of the carboxylate group which imparts acidic nature, and that is why it is also very active in the acidic environment like the abscesses and the pus, which are also seen with Burkholderia pseudomyeli, and it has activity intracellularly. There are recent pharmacokinetic studies which have been done in the Winstar rats which demonstrated levonarifloxacin as a rapid and effective distribution within the bone tissues, and the bone serum ratio was comparable across the segments. Notably, after 5 days of repeated dosing, the bone serum ratio increased to 1.14 in the hard bone, which is almost 5 times higher than the unbound fraction in the plasma, indicating its potential excellent penetration in treating the difficult to treat bone infections. It also has significantly higher concentration into the epithelial lining fluid as well as in the alveolar macrophages, which are critical sites for Burkholderia pseudomyeli persistence, particularly in the acidic intracellular environments where the bacteria can evade the immune responses. And the current oral therapies like TEMP, SMX, and doxycycline lack the intracellular bactericidal activity. What about the safety profile, and is it tolerable? Yes, it is a fluoroquinolone, but it's a next generation fluoroquinolone, and we do not see any prolonged QTC prolongation or tendinitis which is seen with the traditional fluoroquinolones. It does not have any CNS toxicity, no hepatotoxicity, or even nephrotoxicity. Several studies related to the efficacy and safety of oral and IV levonarifloxacin have been published. We can see this here. In fact, I also had personal experience way back in 2022, which we had presented in our national conference SITSCON in 2024, regarding treating a difficult community-acquired MRSA infection which led to the prosthetic joint infection with levonarifloxacin. So, for the first time, because of the personal experience and the data behind, and since we're really out of any options, we tried levonarifloxacin for millidoses. So initially, IV levonarifloxacin was given for 5 days. Subsequently, oral levonarifloxacin at 100 milligrams twice daily was introduced, and the advantage was that the PICC line could be removed. The follow-up, he tolerated the medications, there was no allergy, he remained asymptomatic for the next 6 months, no fever, no pain. A few months later, the WBC scan was performed, which showed that there was a marked resolution in the radial osteomyelitis. It was just lighting up at the proximal site, and hence the antibiotic was continued and subsequently stopped in October late 2024. And this is the bone scan of the patient after stopping the medication. So this is something which I had also presented in 10th World Miliodosis Congress, and we also have the world leading expert here. This is, I'm really glad that they showed keen interest into this, and they have beautiful memories from the World Miliodosis Congress with Professor Pat Curie and my friends Dr. Chimanjita Fukan and Dr. Jiran Joy. And this is here where I also heard about phenafloxacin from Sarah Harding. And she mentioned that phenafloxacin also is one of the cyanofluoroquinolone which has the potential for evading the efflux-mediated fluoroquinolone resistance in Burkholderia pseudomyeli. However, there is no clinical data regarding this particular molecule. And we could finally publish our experience, the first clinical experience of levonarifloxacin in the world as salvage therapy for treating Burkholderia pseudomyeli osteomyelitis in JAK-AMR, and they were kind enough to waive off the APC charges as well. And this was also acknowledged by the editorial board as the best of JAK-AMR. We also subsequently treated another patient with bone miliodosis who had this very extensive knee joint infection with tibial osteomyelitis, and he was advised surgery but was not willing. So we started on initially the traditional therapies, but again he had intolerance to TMP, SMX, as well as ceftazidime. So we started him on levonarifloxacin, and in fact, he had significant improvement. He had come to my clinic in wheelchair, and after a month, he was walking with full flexion of his knee joint. So levonarifloxacin played a critical role in both the intensive as well as the eradication therapy phases without any safety concerns, ensuring sustained therapy and successful clinical resolution. The limitation is, of course, there is a limitation in this drug as well, and that is that it has limited brain penetration and also does not have good concentration into the urine. So we cannot really use it for the neuro or the GU melioidosis. So to summarize, this is in fact my Mamaji who had bone melioidosis, my maternal uncle over here. And this is a picture a year after stopping the antibiotic after its complete treatment. So it's very important for all of us to use the drugs judiciously, and we need newer drug solutions, especially when there is antibiotic intolerance in melioidosis. And choosing the right drug is important because saving one life changes everything. Thank you so much.